Welcome, everyone. Good evening. I'm Julie Gilman. I'm the Select Board Representative to the Exeter Heritage Commission meeting. I'm going to introduce the members, and then we're going to begin our presentation on the Neighborhood Heritage District. And first, I'm going to introduce the members of the board, and after that, the chairman will read the legal statement we have to do about having a public meeting virtually. So let me introduce John Merkel as our chair.
I'm John Merkel, and there's no one else in the room with me.
Jay Myers, our vice chair.
Yes, I'm Jay Myers, and no one is in the room with me. Thank you.
And Maura Fay, our clerk.
Hello, Maura Fay, no one else in the room with me.
And John Gruder, our planning board representative.
John Gruder, and no one in the room with me.
And Pam Jedham, our Historic District Commission representative.
I'm Pam Jedham, and there's no one in the room with me.
And Bill Campbell, who's just a member.
Bill Campbell, and I'm alone in the room.
And you'll see on the screen Liz Herrick, she's recording our minutes, but this is also being broadcast live and recorded. So let me begin. And let me find the thing. Uh-oh. Hold on. I was ready. I'm going to tell you first a little bit about the Heritage Commission. We were established in 2006 by, yes.
Would you want me to read the?
Thank you.
Okay. John Merkel, as chair of the Exeter Heritage Commission, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. On October 16, 2020, public notice of this meeting was posted on the town website and on the bulletin board in the town offices at 10 Front Street. As provided in that public notice, the public may access this meeting online and via phone. Normally here, we would do a roll call vote, but we did that prior to the announcement. But this roll call vote and the status of being alone or having someone with you is required under the right to know law. Okay, Julie.
Thank you.
Julie, I'm sorry, before you begin, do you want me to start sharing my screen and have the slideshow up?
Yes, please.
Okay, give me just one moment. And let me get it to being full screen. Should I have done that before I started screen sharing? There we go. Okay. Everybody able to see that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, great.
All right, as I said, welcome to the informational meeting about a proposed neighborhood heritage district for the Park Street, Cass Street, Forest Street, Oak Street, and surrounding area. Let me tell you a little bit about the Heritage Commission first. We were adopted by a town vote in Exeter in 2006. It's a valuable means to manage, recognize, and protect historical and cultural resources in a town-wide scope. And it does for historical resources what the Conservation Commission does for natural resources. We advise and assist, including proposed demolitions. We conduct inventories of Exeter's history, educate the public, provide information, and serve as a resource for revitalization efforts. What is considered a historic resource? People often asked, what does that mean? Everything in town is historic, or what is a resource to the town? So it's defined by the Secretary of the Interior as any building, park, or landscape that has been in place for over 50 years. Why? These resources represent time periods, patterns of growth, and cultural value that have influenced the town's or states and nation's development over time. 50 years, I know, seems short, but a lot of change can happen in 50 years. Like your children grow up and go away to college. So some examples of our resources are that we include, unlike an historic district, where we only include things from that are defined in a district. Here I'm giving some examples of things that the Heritage Commission may look at depending on what's proposed for the property. So at the top, we have a 1960s ranch. The next one is an 1860s cottage style. We're going to range anywhere from now 1970 to or anything older than built in 1970. I also have included a map from 1802, and you'll see the area of concern here is way up here, and actually some of it is off the map. So sorry, Forest Street property owners, you're not on this map. There are historical maps that you can see on our website that we have in a presentation on the mapping survey project that the Heritage Commission did a few years ago. So what have been our recent projects? Biggest one that's visible to people is the Winter Street Cemetery restoration. And you can see with the picture that some of the work that went into lifting stones that have fallen over, to cleaning stones, and to actually discovering stones that had fallen and were buried over the years. We also did a Franklin and Clifford Street area survey. And what we mean by survey is that we have a consultant go through the area and document the buildings or information about the buildings or information about the growth of the neighborhood or area that we're surveying. And it will be everything from when a building was built to who owned it, to the migration patterns of the area. For example, on Franklin Street, we found that it was a large carriage building and painting industry going on in that area. But it was also an area where people from different nationalities who immigrated would tend to settle first. So we had a large immigration of Polish people from Poland that settled in that area. It was also used for housing for mill workers, because people working at the mill had to be within 5 minutes of work, particularly the women. So many of the houses that are there and were there fit into those descriptions of having been workshops or housing or bringing a different nationality perspective to the area.
And Julie, also the Great Dam marker and the display in the library.
Thank you. There it is right in front of me. The Great Dam, when that was removed, we had to go through a process because we were using federal funds. You'll hear the reference to Section 106. And that's a federal code of regulation that is used when something is going to be removed or built on that involves potentially historic property. So when the dam was removed, that was in a historic district and needed to go through the Section 106. And as part of the mitigation for removing the dam, something that would memorialize that the dam had, or the dam area had been part of Exeter's growth, we went through the process of how are we going to keep the memory of this dam and its function and history of working with the mills. and from the beginning of Exeter until it was removed. So what we have done, if you cross over the Great Bridge, and there you'll see a blue sign that looks like a state historic marker, but it's made for this particular project. You can read a description. It's in Founders Park, but right near the bridge. And you can read a description of how the dam was used over history. One of the other things we did was have an etched panel in the library, one of the windows looking out over the where the dam was, that represents what it looked like then, before it was removed. And you can see through it to see what is there now. And then also as a display in the cemetery of the different time periods, photographs and photographs of the removal, descriptions of what had been there and what it was used for. And I'm going to turn this over. This is the area that was surveyed. And you can see in green, the different buildings that were either photographed or mentioned, and all surrounding the Park Street area, Cass Street area, were some of our earliest settlements in town. So that's why we wanted to survey that area. It comes from, the decision to do that came from our townwide mapping survey that showed the growth over time. And that's why we ended up doing Franklin Street, and now we're doing the Park Street survey. So I'm going to turn this over to whoever is our next speaker. And you see at the bottom of the screen is just the survey, the written survey that we did of the Park Street area. And it's a long link, but you can find it on the Heritage Commission's main page on the town website.
You want to start things off, Maura?
I can. I mean, I guess I can give a little history of kind of how the project came about. At the Heritage Commission, we had talked for a bit about sort of how to best preserve certain areas of town. And one of the ways is, of course, we first need to know what we have. And so looking at this section of Exeter, we really have quite a few houses, especially like Julie was saying, around the Park Street Common area that are some of the oldest in town that are still existing. And so we felt like it would be important to do a pretty in-depth survey of the neighborhood to find out what types of houses exist, kind of the general age of the neighborhood. And we were able, fortunately, to secure a grant to get that survey done, written up, and we do have this great document now as a result, which is very, very thorough and in-depth. And it really, I think, gives us a nice picture of, why this neighborhood is so special, what types of, what types of housing are within it, and also a little bit about kind of how it grew and developed over the last couple of centuries. So I guess that's kind of all I'll say. John, I don't know what else you want to share about this particularly.
Well, if you look at it carefully, you can recognize that virtually every property is a non-conforming use here. None of these buildings would be able to be built right now in the state and the condition that they're in, right? And some of the roads here, Park Street and Summer, I think, and some of them go back to the 1600s. It's older than it's older in parts than our three historic districts. And the fact that these buildings are so close together, and when you walk through this neighborhood, you just feel very comfortable. It's not 2-acre zoning like goes on now. Most of this property was developed after the railroad went through in the early 40s, I believe. It was kind of like one of the earliest areas to be developed like this in Exeter. And we felt that the whole character of the neighborhood, and the consultants actually expanded it. It included Main Street in places, crossover into part of Winter Street, I think, and they've included more property, and they included the actual Park Street Common as a historical piece as well. The whole neighborhood is, we feel, very special, and it deserves some recognition.
Yeah, I think I would just add that, you know, when you do walk around the neighborhood, it gives you that classic New England feel, right? And it's one of the things that people sort of identify with the region. And so as a result, we really felt like it would be important to protect it in some way and to be able to identify it as a unique region of town.
One of the things that you'll find if you read the survey, or as you read the survey, is that this area developed very early because of the mast trees that needed to be provided for the king. And so the timbers would be cut down to the west side of town and carried through, and Park Street used to be called Land's End because as the trees were moved down towards the water and the land ended, the lumber and the timbers were processed what is now Swayze Parkway. And the same with Epping Road. It was also a semi-direct link to the upper part of the river where the sawmills were. So that's why you'll find a couple of taverns, which are very part of the oldest part of the buildings. And then the area that's so most dense around Summer Street, Oak Street, Forest Street were what we call infill. And that's when John's talking about that we don't have the 2-acre zoning. More and more need for affordable housing happened way back. And these properties were built, and then some newer properties were, you know, houses were built in between those. So that's what's made it a nice, dense, walkable neighborhood with a variety of styles and ages.
All right. Let's see.
I think this is me next.
I
Hello,
think
this
that's
is
you, Jay.
hello, this is Jay Myers. Thank you all for coming. As Julie, Maura, and John have pointed out in a very fine way, the question to the answer is, what is a neighborhood heritage district? This is an area of importance designated by the community. It overlays a zoning district of a cohesive area, and it's manageable. It manages change in flexible ways. Quite simply, it gives you all as citizens, or us as citizens, to have input as to the way their neighborhood may change. Go ahead and advance there. And as we all know, change is inevitable. So why is a neighborhood heritage district important? Well, it helps the occupants of the district preserve and revitalize character, gives the citizens voice in controlling demolition, preventing development when incompatible or out of scale. It's helpful for guiding small businesses for plans for expansion. It can help to manage sprawl and prevent encroachment. And it also holds in balance the supply of affordable housing. And I'll turn it over to John to answer the question of how does it work.
Okay, this is John Gruder.
Yes, John Gruder, I think we had you walking through this list.
Yeah, okay. Then how does it work, assuming it's established? Community panel participates in the administrative oversight. The district is technically administered by the planning board, and there's a neighborhood advisory committee of up to, I think up to 7 people. And the committee shall consist of, 3 to 7 people, and they may include 1 or more residents of the neighborhood, which I think is critical. A person familiar with the history and character of the neighborhood, an architect, a business proprietor, a member of the Historic Commission or Heritage Commission, and a member of the Planning Board. They are appointed by the Planning Board, and we will work, Planning Board, if there's 1 or 2 of us on that, will work with the applicants, advise the town planning board. We'll get back to the planning board at our meetings to discuss. And again, hopefully we get more than a couple of people in the neighborhood to participate. You know, if one of the people in the neighborhood is an architect, that wouldn't that be great? Or a business proprietor that could be kind of dual purpose on the committee. Is there another slide, Mara?
Well, I'll take this one.
Okay.
I think that we need to say, before we go too far here, that there's a difference between a neighborhood heritage district and a historic district. Historic district is a land use body that governs very, very strictly what can and can't be done to the buildings in that district and the properties. A neighborhood heritage district doesn't have those stringent guidelines. They make up a plan and to oversee the character of their neighborhood, and it doesn't involve necessarily detailed descriptions of what gets done with doors, sidings, windows, and things. It deals in a different manner in preserving the character of the neighborhood. And that process is really, like John just mentioned, is oversaw by the planning board. There's no separate board that we're pursuing to do this. What we're planning on doing is engaging the property owners as the first part of the process. And that's why you've received that card in the mail for this meeting. We had hoped to have it personally in the town hall, but with the epidemic that we've been dealing with, that we had to put this off to get this far. But anyway, the process is that you, as neighborhood folks and the Heritage Commission, would help with this part. We would develop a proposal to be placed before the planning board. The developed preliminary neighborhood plan that we would also place before the planning board would determine the boundaries. It would confirm the type of a zoning district. In this case, Jay mentioned an overlay one. That's similar to what we do now with the other historic districts. The other part of this is to draft proposed standards for review. And this is the regulatory part of a neighborhood heritage district. After that, the planning board accepts the preliminary plan. And after it accepts the draft ordinance, it prepares it for the town voters. This is the part where it makes it to the ballot, where it gets voted on by the population of Exeter. If it passes, the planning board then creates a neighborhood advisory committee. And that's made up of, hopefully, you folks, local folks, and maybe a member of the Heritage Commission. It hasn't been determined yet. But the Neighborhood Advisory Committee would present final plans for the rules, procedures for the planning board. And it would go into effect at that part. At this point, I think, can we hit the next slide, Jay? We're asking you folks in the public here for questions and comments.
Let me just say here, if you are calling in by phone, the way to participate is to use *6 to either mute or unmute yourself, and *9 to raise your hand. And if people in the public would love to speak, I would love to hear from you. We would all love to hear from you. Just in the lower right-hand corner, I believe, of what you're seeing or on your screen. You can use the lower or raise hand button, and then questions can be answered in the order that we see them.
Julie, do you want to be the person who kind of calls on people? Or John?
Let Julie do this.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to ask, when I call on you, please state your name and where you live. You don't have to give the number of your street, but just what street you live on. So first, I'm going to ask Jeff McClinch to speak.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. My name is Jeff McClinch. My family and I live at 16 Epping Road, and thank you for featuring our home on your cover page. Just as hoping the members of the commission could expand upon what they see as the sort of possible pros and cons of creating the district, both from the town's perspective, but also for homeowners or businesses that might be within the district. You know, what you see as the benefits to homeowners, what, you know, potential restrictions they might face, just kind of weigh the pros and cons for everybody.
Hey, Maura, you going to take that one?
Yeah, I would love to actually. Jeff, I'm so glad you're here. Your home is one of the primary reasons I really feel like we need to be creating this heritage district. It's probably maybe the oldest existing home in Exeter. And you know, one of the things that I think is really important to me is that we don't lose houses like this. As it stands right now, as a heritage commission, a home like yours you could propose to demolish it. You could say, I'd like to tear this down. It's just too much work. It's too hard to take care of. And you could ask to demolish it, and we could go through and say, you know, we don't think you should for this reason or that reason. But in the end, at the end of the day, you would be allowed to tear that house down. And so what I see as the big benefit for the town, obviously, is that we don't end up losing incredibly important historic homes like that, like the other, you know, 2 or 3 early 1700s homes that are around Park Street Common, and even, you know, some of the homes that date from the mid 1800s, which, you know, seems like not that long ago, but is significantly long ago, that we don't want to lose that feeling of what this neighborhood is about. I think if I remember correctly, Julie, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, when I was reading through the state handbook from the Division of Historic Resources, it did look like if we were to create a heritage district, that homeowners might become eligible for potential help with renovation, or there looked like there was some kind of assistance that might be possible if people were looking for some kind of assistance with a renovation around a historic home like this in a district.
Yes, there are a few different you just said it. Oh, grant opportunities from the state that are available to usually to the public, the town entity, but there are also advantages from for personal preservation, particular property preservation. So that's an outlet from the New Hampshire Division of Historical Resources. And one of the things I'll tell you that the Heritage Commission has done has to designate Exeter, or chief designation for Exeter, as what's called a certified local government. And that puts us nationally recognized as a town that appreciates its history and protects its history. And one of the advantages of it is that there are federal funds available only to certified local governments. So some of the projects that we've done have been free because we've gone through that process with a certified local government. And some of them are a split 60-40, depending on the kind of work we want to do. But within that is an advantage to property owners to prove that this is a piece of property that's been documented as important to the town's heritage, and there's some availability working with the town, and also there are national grants that can be used for upkeep and, preservation techniques. So there are opportunities for members of the public with a singly, owning their own property, that we can find a way to help you offset the costs of your preservation plans.
Thank you. Could I pose one other question?
Please.
You had sort of laid out the steps in the process in an earlier slide, and I was curious what the commission's thinking is about potential timing. Are you considering bringing this in such a way that it'd be before the voters in March of 21, or at some point in the future?
I'll take that one if you want. The process of starting or designating a heritage district neighborhood begins with the Heritage Commission making a pitch to the planning board. And again, if the planning board is interested, which I hope you will all, when we do this, will all come in favor of it, we would go ahead and develop the what we, as John said, the different things on this slide to propose to the planning board. If the planning board likes it, then it'll go forward to the voters. So that's not going to happen between now and March 21st. So we're looking at this as March 2022.
Great, thank you. And let me assure you and everybody else at the commission and anybody who might be listening, we have absolutely no plans to demolish our home at any time in the near future.
Phew.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff. Next, we have Jackie Rockel. Correct me if I misstate your name.
Jackie, you're still muted. Oh, there you go.
Close enough. I live on Park Street, and I've spent a good deal of money working on my house over the years, and that's been difficult enough. Getting all the safety things right, getting the financing, getting a contractor, all those sorts of things. And I'm sure there are lots of other people in the neighborhood who worked on their homes and dealt with all of those situations. It sounds to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that you're kind of asking us to sign up for being in a district with the rules that don't exist yet. They aren't the same as the Historic District Commission rules, but they're rules that have to be defined. So it's really hard for me personally, I don't know about anybody else, to be very enthusiastic about approving something when I don't know what it is I'm approving. I guess that people have to start somewhere, but I'm having trouble wrapping my head around this, quite frankly.
Well, one of the things about this is that first, the planning board would just decide on whether a heritage district is something important to them. So that would be the place, not what we're going to do, how it would be processed, or what the definition of what you can't, what we want to see you do with your properties, or see what properties really need protection. It's something, first, the planning board has to decide if they're interested in having this different kind of, I won't call it a land use board, because it's not going to be regulatory as in, town or even state rules or laws. So it's at that point just a theory. And then after that, that's when we would start to define what you want to see in your neighborhood as protections. And that's where your neighborhood would really be involved, and saying, yes, we want to keep, maybe you want to keep statuary from in front of somebody's yard, from in front of yards, or you want fences in front of all yards, or you don't want to see buildings over a certain age demolished. That's where you'd start to develop your rules of what you want to see, or how you want to preserve the aspects of your neighborhood. And the things I'm throwing out there are really, things you might consider at all. But they're just examples of how you can get really extreme, or you can keep it more simple. And we would also determine the boundaries. Some people won't be interested in participating in this adventure. So it might extend, we've done the survey of a very extensive area, but that's not necessarily the area that we will end up defining, depending on what this group decides is the best, or I want to be part of it, or I don't want to be part of it. And then we would propose, and this is where also the group would be included. And if you hear my fire alarm go off, it's because dinner's ready. Yeah, this is where you would talk about, would actually develop the standards of review, whether you want it to go through the Heritage Commission first, whether you just want to keep it at the neighborhood level. And then the planning board would accept what has been developed as a preliminary plan. After that is when we come into the organization of a neighborhood people, planning board representative, Heritage Commission representative, whatever the neighborhood decides, what group of people, or what am I going to say? I'm thinking like John is an architect, people's work experience, financing experience, that kind of thing. So you propose what kind of representatives you want to have on this commission, so that when a property owner is looking at their property to either develop or and somehow change drastically, this body that is defined in the plan would be the ones that would be considering it. So the neighborhood's aspect, the neighborhood's interest in this is defining what the extent of the neighborhood that you want to protect the heritage of, and the extent of how much change you want to decline. And part of the reason for doing this is to provide for, I think one of the slides showed more control over the development, and also a way to provide for workforce housing, because we're going to protect those areas. So you won't see one whole street, bought up by one person and demolished in order to put in newer housing at, what is supposed to be or proposed to be better. And those of us who believe in the heritage of our town want to protect our heritage and not see it all wiped out for newer development that's deemed to be a better investment. So your investment as a neighborhood would be to protect what you have, and why you bought a piece of property there, and why you live there. So the plan would be developed by the neighborhood and then presented to the planning board. So your part of it is very important, because you know what you like there, you know how you use the neighborhood, you know what you want to see stay there, and what you want to see come in, if there's anything like that. So I'd say that we're not imposing anything on you. We're asking you to participate in this and work on what you might want to impose. But some plans in the state have gotten very precise and really tight. But we have the opportunity here to just say, we do not want properties to be further developed or demolished and redeveloped. We'd like to see them worked with, because the Heritage Commission is only advisory. So I know you've seen properties demolished around town, and all the Heritage Commission can do is go to the property, investigate it, review it, and then make a recommendation to the property owner of whether or not it is still contributing as a historical resource, a single representation of a time period, or a structural integrity, or a structural design, and then the owner can just go up and do what they want. So part of this heritage neighborhood is to help the Heritage Commission actually in when something's going to be proposed for your neighborhood, that we can come in and say, see, this is what this heritage district is respecting of their property, and your proposal may go against that, so we recommend preservation. So it's really important to have that neighborhood and the aspects of your neighborhood that you love, you want to see protected. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but that the participation of the people that live in the heritage district are the ones that are controlling how it grows or develops.
I don't know. It just sounds even fuzzier to me, but are there any towns or cities around here that have an example of a heritage district and a historic district, and the differences that we could look at for an example? That would be one question. Another question specifically about demolition. I mean, I bought an old house because I wanted an old house, but believe me, this house was pretty much a dump when I moved here. And we did demolish part of it because the architects told us there was absolutely no way it could be restored. So, you know, you have to let people do the right thing for the safety of themselves and their families as well. So we can't get so wrapped up in the history of the thing that, you know, we force people, you know, to sell their property and move because they can't afford to do the repairs that they might need to do. And I think people need to keep that in mind. And that's all I really want to say on this. I'll let somebody else have a turn.
Okay, thank you. The idea of the demolition and being ruled, no, you can't do that, you must preserve it, is really an extreme. And again, the neighborhood can set the standards if there is economic reason that it cannot be preserved, if it's and you know, if part of your property was secondary to the main historical property or building, then this district and people who are making the considerations for you would not say, no, you can't do that, unless that's the plan. But again, the plan is made by the interested parties in the district.
Well, and Julie, if I can add too, I think, you know, what makes a plan like this appealing to me, at least, is that it is very flexible. It does not have the rigidity of a historic district. What it does is allows you to take a look at the neighborhood as a whole and say, as an advisory board, and say, you know, here's our rule about demolition: no demolition unless, or, you know, with this caveat, or, you know, whatever seems reasonable to the people who live in the neighborhood, and not in such a way. Hopefully, I mean, the ideal is not to make it restrictive. The ideal is to have an option to preserve, and also give people, as we talked about before, avenues to access money that they can't currently access, that could maybe help them bring a piece of their house kind of up to a safety standard that they need to do, and that they might not be able to do without some help. So I feel like this is flexible. It's designed to be that way so that districts in town can then make the choices that seem best to them. I don't know if I saw it posted on our website yet, Julie, but there is a manual that was developed by the district for what's the name of the Historic Resources Division. And in there, it not only lays out the types of things that you might include, a couple of ideas, but it also at the end has a list of towns and cities around the country that do have a heritage district. So you can take a look at what some of these plans say, you know, what exactly people have decided they want to allow, disallow, and things like that. So there are examples out there that you can take a look at. If that manual is not on our website yet, we will make sure it's up there soon.
Okay, next we have Michael DeSilvio. You are still mute.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking my question. So I'm on Green Street. I have two questions and one observation. My first question is if you could differentiate what a contributory means compared to a non-contributory property. That's my first question, yeah.
I'm going to go
And-
back to the map there so we can see. I'm going to circle a couple of things on the map that are non-contributing.
Sure.
John Merkel, do you want to talk to that?
Yes, what you see here is are the green buildings are considered contributing. Now, if you were to go to the actual survey, I don't know if I can do this or not. The survey is on, it's available on the website.
Yeah, I actually downloaded the PDF you folks made available.
Yeah,
So it's quite useful.
There's a list of every property surveyed here, and determination whether it's a contributing. Now, there's different historic periods here, and it's not.
I'm on a call about the historic thing.
Yeah, what they're talking about is the neighborhood, and when they say that these buildings are contributing, they're not contributing to one unified style. They're contributing to the quality and the feel of the place that they are sitting and how people react to them. And the more I circled some of the yellow ones, they are secondary contributing buildings. They're mostly outbuildings, and they're you see within the district, you see white ones that are just, they're either modern buildings or they're buildings that are not, you can see, identified closely to the neighborhood. So they're out there independently of themselves. So what is on the street in most cases, unless it's been made to be a newer piece of property or an infill that was done later, most of these properties have some historical value, and they are contributing into the neighborhood.
I guess I should have been clear with my question. Reading the map, it's pretty clear. What I meant to say was, how in fact does the heritage district you're proposing impact those properties that are non-contributory as opposed to those that are? You follow my question?
Gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah.
I see what you mean. So would the regulations that are developed for the district apply to those non-contributing buildings?
Precisely. Thank you.
That's a good question.
That's one that should be discussed when the regulations are explored.
Okay, so that goes to the previous caller's question, which is still a little muddy exactly what we're signing up for before we know what it is you entail to do. So that's great. Thank you for that. The second question was, let's say this was approved and we went forward with it. Are there any particular tax advantages in terms of what the town may levy as an assessment due to, say, the implied value increasement that this historic designation would have? So let's say, for example, it's designated and suddenly we see a 25% increase in the value of our homes because everybody believes that this will remain its unique characteristic. And suddenly across the board, the town says, oh, we're going to increase your taxes 25%. So suddenly we now are facing a 25% increase in our taxes. Does that protect us from that?
I'll answer that. Your taxes, your tax levy is based on the value of your home, and the value or the value, the assessment is based on the quality of the house, but it's more not the historical value of the house. It's just the quality of the building, whether it's brand new or a Victorian. It's a style, but not something that is considered in the value of your house. So no, this would not affect your taxation at all. In the historic districts, what it does is protect you from, it's not designated on your tax card or maybe it is, but it does not have any influence on the value of your property. So you know,
So-
you wouldn't be jumping your taxes just because you're in this designated neighborhood.
Now, I understand that New Hampshire is unique taxation as it comes to properties, and it's kind of pointless to even make a complaint about it. But I guess to your point, you essentially said if your house is Victorian or whatever, that has an impact on your taxes. So I would argue that categorically, if my property fell within this historic district, they could say, oh, you're categorized as historic, therefore we can do what we will with the taxes accordingly. But that said, that's fine. There's not really a clear answer on that. So so two questions asked. The other thing I wanted to point out was earlier in the discussion, we were told that this was for a heritage district. Yeah, is that right?
Right.
So what I'm seeing on the map here, it clearly says historic district. So it might be good to align the collaterals with what exactly it is you folks are doing. Because if it's not an historic district and in fact a heritage district, the documentation should reflect that accordingly. Otherwise, we may get the wrong understanding. So that was my only point. But that's all I had to say. So thanks for your time.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
That's a good point too. The definition of what we're trying to explain here is that the Historic District Commission has definitely defined outlines that are voted on by the whole town. And the Heritage District would be voted on by the planning board. So there wouldn't be a designation of you know, the regulatory things that the Historic District Commission goes through, you know, come see us if you want to, you have to see us if you want to change your windows.
I see.
I can maybe answer that too.
Yeah, thanks, John.
The form that's used is a type of, nationally, it's known as a type of an area form. And heritage districts only came into existence in 1980, I believe. And prior to that, historic districts existed since the 60s, in New Hampshire, at least. So the form doesn't give you an option to fill it out like it was they give you three options: a townwide survey, an historic district, or a project area. So it's a matter of semantics in that it does say historic district and it's printed on most of the government paper here, but that's not what we're asking for.
Yeah, you're saying that the legal bureaucratic side hasn't caught up.
No, it hasn't.
And it's only been 40 years, so maybe another 40 years they'll finally fix it. Yeah.
Hey,
And to that point, Julie,
Yes.
best of luck on Tuesday.
Oh, thank you very much. That's for a different form, though, I have to tell you.
Yeah, I know.
But
Thanks so much.
Okay, now we have Doug and Eileen Flockhart.
You guys need to unmute yourselves.
I got it, yeah. Knowing that the Heritage District would go before the planning board for their interest and approval before it could go before the town. And then once voted on by the town, would still be under the umbrella of the planning board. What kind of independence could we possibly have in making decisions or being able to accomplish things without a very convoluted back to the planning board, back to a meeting, back to the planning board? It seems very cumbersome.
Well, you want me to speak for the planning board?
Sure.
You know, we try not to be that way, but you know, we have a job to do and different rules and whatnot to enforce. This, I believe, will be our first venture at the Heritage District. I think that if you you come into a planning board meeting and have reasonable requests and stuff like that, you're not going to get, I don't think, any real resistance. We're all residents of the town. We all want what's best for the town of Exeter. So I don't believe, I could speak, I think, for the current members, I don't think anyone will be difficult. I think we all have the same goal.
And I'd like to say that if the planning board goes ahead and accepts the concept that we want to develop an area of protection that is not as harshly or may not be at all harshly regulated as the historic district is, that the input of the neighborhood would have some weight on development around them. Because the planning board would have accepted this as an important function, an important feature. If something were to occur nearby, that people from within this heritage district would be, I think, given more weight than someone across town, because this is going to affect your neighborhood directly.
And one of the things that I've read about the district, you want to work to either, if there's any commercial encroachment, that it's something that is compatible with what's existing there, and keep any sprawl away from that area. Not that there's pretty much potential for that, but.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
This neighborhood heritage district that we're putting before you is like written based on the town's master plan. It's tailor-made for it.
True, because part of the master plan was to preserve and protect the historical context and the heritage of the town. So this is one resource that we can use that is not going to impose upon you the restrictions that a historic district commission reviews, but it will help protect your neighborhood. Okay. Does that answer your question, Eileen?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have someone named Shander.
I was supposed to say my street.
Jack's Court.
Hi everyone, Exeter TV here. This is Shander is someone who has an older version of Zoom and needs to be at least temporarily promoted to panelist. And I checked their IP and they're in Windsor. Would you like me to temporarily promote them?
I can
No, they're in
vouch for them.
Exeter.
I know
They're
who
in
they
Exeter.
are.
Yeah, I was gonna say, where's Windsor?
Yeah, that's the phone number that's up next. It's from Windsor. This person is from Exeter. So can I promote them?
Sure.
Yes.
All right. You've been promoted. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Thank you. All right, I think you hear me now.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, this is Joel Shander. I live on Park Street. I swear I'm at Park Street right now. And I guess I'm somewhat heartened to hear some of the questions that have come before, and a little bit concerned as well, because some of the concerns that I had when I first heard about this, I'll say, are not necessarily, and sometimes when some people speak, they get assuaged a bit, and then when people say something else, I'm concerned again. And so I guess I have a couple of points, or a few points. It's more like 4 that I'd like to at least kind of talk through, and just kind of add that to the discussion of things that get factored into kind of the way things move forward. I think it was maybe 2 callers ago that had a discussion, said, there's seems like a real ambiguity as to whether this is about his historicness or historicity as opposed to heritage. And those, I think, are somewhat defined distinctly in the, certainly the New Hampshire guidebook that talks about heritage districts doesn't really seem to match so well with the study that was done, which seems to be much more aligned with like a National Historic Site, or something that is, you're trying to, possibly even, attempting to preserve things at a state and time as originally or in the past or whatever. And so I think it sounds like other people also have these concerns of what exactly is this? And especially when I look at the map, I would say this is not the neighborhood boundaries that I would draw. For example, I think originally it was called Park Street neighborhood, and there's other streets that have been added, but a quarter of Park Street is not included, and Warren Avenue and Hale Street are not included. And even though you would have to go there, they dead end, right? So you can't get out of them without going through. And it's not like we don't speak to our neighbors on those streets either. And so I think there's definitely like reconciling that needs to happen on all of those fronts. And I did look at I haven't been able to read everything. And I think the original report was like 250 pages. And then there's the State Heritage Commission kind of guidebook that's about 30 or 40 pages. I did have a chance to at least skim through them. And one of the things I guess I should say before I go down this rabbit hole, that I think the more something like this sounds like preservation light, I'm less interested in it than it is sort of this notion of sort of like there's a character and we want to have some sort of community definition of the kinds of things that we collectively value, as opposed to, for example, I used to live in a place where the color of my door is regulated, and this was not like a historical home. This was just like a homeowners association, and window sizes and things like this. And so when you go through this state guidebook, it starts out saying, oh yeah, this is not going to be something where they're going to regulate like the trim on your windows and nothing like that. It's all kind of at a, say, holistic level, the character of the entire neighborhood. It doesn't deal with individual properties. And then you go further on and it's like, but if you want to change the size of your windows, that's going to fall subject to this. Or if you want to remove a tree from your property, that's going to fall subject to this. And then it sounds like a lot of that, once you get to the very end, there's sort of a form, I guess I think they call it a model ordinance. And the idea is you kind of pick and choose as a community, what things do I want to, does this community want to be able to, I hesitate to say regulate, but say kind of come to our definition of what constitutes, quote, heritage for that organization and what doesn't. And some of the things that are in there sound a lot like, they don't sound like heritage. They sound like things that are going to require a lot of bureaucracy, probably a lot more trips to more boards, and a lot more trying to convince people, if you're a property owner, like, I want to do this, and they say, oh, well, we don't like that because it ruins the aesthetics of my idea of what that property should look like, which again, I'm not, I raise all these questions, or kind of raise all of this stuff to just kind of say that there's some ambiguity, and it almost sounds like if you follow that guidebook to the letter, you put the commission into effect before anyone has even determined what the rules are, and then the rules are even generated by people who may not even live in the neighborhood, which could be good or bad depending on what you're seeking to do. And so, yeah. So I guess those are. I think I can skip most of the rest of the questions, but I think that probably what I've said so far kind of captures some of my broad concerns. But I guess listening to what people have said so far, it sounds like there could be views on, I'll say, the far extremes of both of those things, whether this is sort of like guidance where someone from, the Heritage Commission can say, look, we really don't want you to put a skylight in, or it could be something where it's like, no, we're going to tell you that you can't do that, and we have the authority to somehow regulate, your private property. And so it's very, it's ambiguous, and I think all that should really be clarified before anything goes further. And it definitely sounds, or I shouldn't say definitely sounds, it sounds possible that some of what the group here tonight is asking for is maybe for those kinds of things to be established before this kind of goes to the next step along the way to possibly being, put forward to the town or not. But I guess a question that I don't see really hasn't come up yet, and I haven't seen answered is, can individual property owners opt out in the same way that there's boundaries of the neighborhood, and some of these are like, there's like kind of individual houses that have been like included or excluded, almost based on, actually a lot of them may be based on age, which might be due to the study that was done. But I'm pretty sure there's a lot of houses that are just outside the edge of the map, and there's nothing beyond that property except forest or water, and they're older than 1970. So that's, I guess, another thing I find curious. So I think with that, I've talked more than enough, and I'll just kind of leave it there.
Can I take on the part of how this neighborhood was defined, the map that you see? Okay.
Sure.
When we went to the Division of Historical Resources for the grant to survey this area, the commission agreed on there are particular buildings that we wanted to see documented, because this is a goal of the state, is also to gather all of these individual surveys that different towns do, so that we can compare, there are so many properties in town from this period, or Exeter has the densest area of that period, something like that. So when a survey is done, there is a form that follows the National Register of Historic Preservation. And that's what you see in the report. So that's why it looks overarching. Everything is a contributing factor, or some are not. And we defined our area because there are buildings on the outliers of the edges that we wanted to have included to be documented as the reason why they're considered a historic resource to the town's heritage. We wanted to go out to the jail. We wanted to include the train master's house over on the west side. We wanted to include the park, and then when it was quite extensive and probably bigger than the grant that we received to do this. And I'm sure that the contractor made no money on it, but they also suggested we need to go out to different extents because of the contributing factors of the properties that they found. So what you see on this map isn't necessarily going to be what the properties that were selected for this were sent out the information to come to this meeting. And it doesn't necessarily mean your property will be included in the final adaptation of the heritage neighborhood district. And that's where the first step is the planning board just saying, we like this concept, let's start with this area, and you guys come up with a plan. And that's where the group, the neighborhood will get together and make that definition. Do we want to go past the railroad tracks? Do we want to include Lucas Street and further down, because they can have contributing factors. And that's a decision made by a group that you folks will establish, and you will establish it. Let me step back to the process. And then the planning board will approve the district, and then set a committee that will approve or make the determinations of what extents you want to go to as far as development or not development, or changes in the size of your windows or not. It can be historic district light, if you want to think about it that way. But it's more ruled by the people that live there, and ruled is probably not the right way to say it, but the voters have to decide for a historic district what can and cannot happen without regulation. Here, the neighborhood would decide what can or cannot be, I don't want to say regulated, but I know in the manual there are examples of really strict rules applied to a heritage district, like no flagpoles or take your clothesline down, those kind of things. And, you know, we don't want to go that far. We don't even really go that far or we don't go that far in a historic district, but we could. Here, the neighborhood will make those kind of decisions. Are these important features to have any kind of decision power, you know, making any decisions over, and not have to deal with the regulations of a historic district which will want to say something about your windows. Here, your neighborhood can decide, you know, upgrades to homes can be make for a better home. You know, the windows changes may be better for your home more than keeping the ones that you have. Those are the kind of considerations that a group from this heritage district would make. That would then get presented to the planning board. If the planning board ever has to consider anything in this area, as far as new development or redevelopment, then they would have to consider the aspects of the neighborhood's plan for, you know, master plan for what you want to preserve and protect or give freedom to. And again, it would only be tying by what the planning board would like to take on, I guess is the word. So I hope that answers that part of the question. The extent of the neighborhood defined here is because of the type of paperwork, basically in the report that was written. That's the technical form that it has to come in, but it is not necessarily what this neighborhood may define by its extents.
And if I can add, Julie, a little bit just about kind of what exactly the rules could look like. It is ambiguous because it's meant to be left up to the discretion of the people who live in the neighborhood. So I think the idea is that when you take a look at sort of the look of the houses in general, some neighborhoods might choose to go so far as to say, you know, no, you can't, you know, if you have 6/6 windows, you have to keep them 6/6. You couldn't replace them with, you know, casement, you know, a different style of window or something like that. That is an option, but again, that would be up to the advisory group who got together and who would work within the auspices of the planning board to make those decisions. I think one of the things I noticed in the handbook is that they talk about, you know, sort of considering a home like from the street side, and the idea that, you know, what you kind of see as you walk around the neighborhood is what contributes to the feel of it as a heritage district. So while you may, as a neighborhood advisory group, say, you know, on the street side of the house, you know, windows need to be kept to this, whatever, you know, the existing is, you know, on the rear of the house, do what you will, because if nobody's seeing it, it's not detracting from the overall feel of the neighborhood. So those are some examples. It's not to say that that will necessarily be part of the discussion, but that is a potential. You know, one of the other examples I saw in the handbook was things like, you know, designating that, you know, porches need to be kept on. You know, if you need to fix or repair or, you know, tear the porch off and rebuild it, you can, but you got to keep a porch where there was a porch, again, to sort of pull together that feel of the neighborhood. Not to say that repairs can't be made, changes can't be made, but just that it would be done with a view to maintaining a feel of this being a historic area of town.
Okay, next we have Susan Scannell.
I'm on Cass Street in Exeter. And one, there's been a lot of good questions. So I have a few. One is, what prompted this? Like, why did somebody decide we wanted to go down this road? Two, years ago, I don't remember how many, we, Cass Street people, were invited to several meetings to include Cass Street in the historic district. I don't know if it was just Cass Street, if it was more than Cass Street. And that was voted down. So I guess, and then the third point, question, whatever, is we have a zoning board, which I think does a great job. We also have a historic district board, which does a great job. So I don't really understand what this is all about. So we on Cass Street have already voted down that we did not want to be included in the historic district. And again, we can go back and look at when that was a town vote. It was on the ballot, and I don't recall what year. There were several meetings about that. And we, as a street, decided we did not want to be part of that. So I guess not like what's in it for me, but I don't really understand what prompted this. Was it the whole Rose Farm thing that prompted this, that people don't want somebody to be able to come in and change a neighborhood? Is that what prompted this? That's what's confusing to me. Thank you.
Well, I guess I'll take a shot at this. We are a certified local government, and we are, in order to do that, we have to maintain the fact that Exeter as a community cares very much about its historical assets. And in doing that, we were awarded a grant through the Certified Local Governments Program. And we did surveys on the Winter Street Cemetery. There were 3 other locations that were mentioned earlier in this presentation. One of the earlier ones, the mapping survey, identified this section of town as being special. And you folks on Cass Street have some of the older buildings in this perimeter here of things, and that was made note of. But there are some other places here, a couple, 1 or 2 maybe, that are even older. And yet there's a whole section here that developed here because the railroad went by after your buildings were built. So this whole section of town here is really kind of unique. It's some of Exeter's most aggressive development at a very early stage. And the folks at the Division of Historical Resources recognized that. And they felt it was worthy of being surveyed in more detailed. And that's where this is coming from.
And I think, Susan, can you remind me, you asked about why wouldn't we just allow the zoning board? And there was another board you mentioned.
Well, the historic commission.
Oh, the historic, right.
And
so,
Cass Street already said they didn't want to be part of the historic district. So
yeah,
I don't, again, not to be like selfish, but it's like, I don't see any advantage to this. And I guess from a marketing standpoint, that's what you need to sell all these little green buildings on this map. Like, not what's in it for me, but what is in it for me? We went through this in a lot of detail when they wanted us, and I don't know who else was involved, but they really pushed hard for Cass Street to be involved in the historic district. And when push came to shove, nobody wanted to do it because of the added regulations, so, and there was a gentleman that spoke earlier who said, it sounds like, and that this is one more thing, like now you're going to go before the zoning board, the planning board, the historic board, and now this historic commission. So I don't get it, but obviously, so somebody got a grant. I got that much out of this, that somebody got a grant. So that's what prompted this whole thing. And, but I don't, not like what's in it for me, but yes, I live in a historic home, an old home, And I cherish and value that. And everything I do has to do with that being a historic home. I don't need anybody to regulate that. And I don't really understand, does it just mean that you have to go through one more board if you want to do something? I don't get it. Like, you got to sell it to us. I don't get it.
So Susan, if I can just respond to the zoning and the historic district idea. Neither the zoning board nor the historic district would have any regulatory abilities in what we're talking about here. So because none of these houses are in a historic district, and as you were saying, people on Cass Street decided they did not want to be in a historic district, the Historic District Commission has absolutely no say over what happens to any of the houses outside of the boundaries of the districts that exist. So one reason that we felt it was really important to try to do something like this was because there are so many contributing properties in this area that we would hate to lose. We would hate to see, you know, a house along Cass Street that is, you know, as old as most of those houses are, be knocked down and be lost to the town. So I don't think anybody is suggesting that this be a historic district. In fact, nobody is suggesting that. That's not the idea at all. The idea is that we are able as a town to say, these houses have value, intrinsic value, and that they should not be demolished, and that we should be allowed as a town to say that this is a resource that we want to be preserved. It doesn't mean that you can't do anything to your property. It wouldn't mean that you couldn't make renovations or do the things that you need to keep your home comfortable and safe. It would just mean that if you wanted to radically alter the exterior or tear it down, or do something that would basically render it, you know, not the home it is currently, that the town would have a say in that and be able to say, no, we really can't let you do that. So I guess, you know, what's in it for you? I don't know. Do you love having a historic house? Would you be sad if, you know, the house across the street got torn down and replaced with, you know, a modern looking multi-level apartment? I feel like a lot of people in this neighborhood would probably feel sad about that. So, you know, I guess speaking as someone who lives in the neighborhood, that's my feeling about it, is that it feels like a special place. It feels like a place that, you know, people move to for a reason and enjoy living there because of the way that it feels. And so in order not to lose that, we need to be able to take steps as a town to preserve it.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'd like to add on to that again. What the neighborhood, what the heritage district is defined as would be made up by the folks that live in it. It wouldn't be defined by the whole town. What the whole town works on is whether or not we accept the idea of a heritage district at all. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the planning board would be the one that decides on or approves the plan that the neighborhood comes up with. So the restrictions are going to be whatever, if there are restrictions, are going to be made by
Julie, I think we lost you there.
Yeah, we did.
Oh dear.
While we wait for Julie to get back on, John or Pam or Jay, did any of you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, as one who does serve on both heritage and historic district, the reason that we wanted to make this a heritage as opposed to a historic district was realizing that historic district really does have a lot very, very picky rules. And I have to say, I spend an awful lot of my time doing what my dear father used to call picking the fly shit out of the pepper. And we would like you not to have to go through this. But what we're trying to do is keep the idea of the housing. Now, this lady who just spoke said that she lived in a historic house and loved it. But if you're not in a historic district there or a heritage district, and the lady across the street decides, I'm going to build a great big gray apartment house in the back of my lot because I want to make more money. Guess what? There's not a thing you can do about it. And that's what we'd like to stop.
Yeah, thank you, Pam, and I'll echo that maybe in another way too. And I don't want the callers and the attendees to lose sight of the big picture and really what we're talking about is the big picture. And the Heritage Commission, much like a Conservation Commission of Natural Resources, is trying to establish some legacy areas to be able to have a voice in what happens to that, not only now but in the future. Like I shared in terms of the slides, this change is inevitable. We're all not going to be here forever, but Exeter will be here forever. And if we can make some thoughtful decisions about this particular area, then we do our town a service by creating the space for future generations.
And I would like to add on, Pam went a little bit strong there, I have to say, that it's not that we want to prevent change. We just want to let the neighborhood have a more direct and impactful say in what may change. I think one of the examples was a business moving in. Well, that would be controlled first by the zoning board because that would be a change of use from a residential to commercial, which is currently not allowed in that neighborhood. If that gets approved, then the heritage district would have more group, I guess, a bigger or a denser response to what is approved, or a bigger or dense appeal or say in why that change should not occur to protect your property values and the prospects, the look and feel and preservation of the neighborhood as a residential development area. So that's one of the things. So, there are regulations from the planning board and the zoning board that may apply to something that's newly proposed, that this group as a neighborhood would have a little bit more weight. And if we adopt this and we adopt the findings that the neighborhood decides are what fits best for what you want to present yourselves as a heritage district, would have more weight. And I'm not saying somebody who doesn't live there but is a property owner might decide they would try to subdivide their property to try and cram another piece of new house onto an already existing lot. Again, that would be something the zoning board would approve first. But if the Heritage Commission or Heritage District, neighborhood district is put in place, then that gives more reason for the zoning board to deny this kind of change. Planning board may not come into it at all, depending on what the project is. So it's really to help you preserve what can happen, or to help you help us preserve what can happen in your defined neighborhood. That helps. Okay, if no one else wants to contribute to the answer, and I haven't made it even more grayer than already. Next is Doug and Eileen, but I'm going to ask you to wait because we have Rob Richards, who has not spoken yet. So if we can go with Rob.
Hello, this is Kelly Richards, but Rob is here as well. And first, I'd just like to acknowledge this group, and I'd really like to thank you for putting all of this hard work together, because it's a tremendous amount of work, and I appreciate it. Rob and I live at 25 Cass Street, and some of our dear neighbors have already spoken this evening. And I would concur that we have spent a lot of money and put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this property. And we're proud of that. And we're proud of our neighborhood. We're proud of the collaboration amongst our neighbors. We are often out in our yards or working on the properties during every season of the year. So I want to acknowledge all of us for contributing to that. Mm-hmm. But I'd also like to speak in defense of this idea and say that I appreciate the distinction between a heritage district and a historic district, because what you're offering us is flexibility, which I think everyone wants based on all the questions that we've had. But you're also giving us the opportunity to leave a legacy and have the foresight that a lot of communities don't take advantage of. And so I think we have to ask ourselves really, do we want to be part of something bigger than ourselves that we can leave for posterity and take advantage of it with the degree of flexibility that this program would offer us. So thank you, and really appreciate all of your hard work.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I think, one of the things that Jay said made me think of, and it ties into what you're saying here. Cass Street is a gorgeous example of what property owners can do when they're able to care for their historic homes and keep them up and really, really treasure them. It's amazing. And I would hate to see that get lost if homes like that get sold to someone who doesn't have that kind of love and care for the historic nature of the home. I think I love your idea of talking about what kind of a legacy can we leave. We're probably hopefully not going to be the last owners of our homes. And hopefully there will be many more generations who get to enjoy this neighborhood. But that can only happen if we're able to preserve its character. So thank you for your comments. I think that really ties together what we've been trying to share. So I appreciate it.
Maura, if I may, this is Rob, and my wife did not tell me she was calling, so I think we're more or less on the same page, but I did want to I just wanted to echo a little bit of what Jackie was saying earlier, just on the thought that this will come across somewhat selfishly, but I think my point is that there an incentive, and this sort of ties into what Susan maybe was talking about too, that the folks who live and breathe and work in these old places, we do a lot to do that. And Kelly just said that too. So there's part of me that, that would love to have some sort of, not just the recognition of the heritage, which I fully, appreciate, but an incentive, or I don't even know. I mean, I'm talking facetiously now, but if there was even awareness of what it takes to keep
to do the upkeep on an old place. I think a lot of folks don't know. And so paying the taxes in this town on an old place. And so I sort of think ahead, wondering, well, if we do become part of a heritage community or district, will potential home buyers in the future go, well, there will be restrictions on that. And therefore we might have a harder time selling the house. Now, we have no designs to do that. And we bought the place with the intention of doing, knowing that we would do some maintenance. We had no idea how much more needed to get done to really keep the building sound, because it's astonishing. But these are two full-time teachers, so we're really, we've been stretched. So I guess it's a slightly long-winded way of saying that if there was, you mentioned earlier that the state or we looked into getting some help to try to do the upkeep on our little red barn, which has sort of become our garage, with the hopes that the state could help us out. And we actually went to great length to do that. And in the end, we received nothing other than a free ring binder and more information about the history, which was interesting, but it's a slightly a tricky, sticky wicket in some ways, because if there was an incentive for the cost, and it is expensive to live in town and pay these taxes. So I guess I'm sympathetic to both sides of what I'm hearing. And I would just hope that that everybody understands both sides with clarity. And it is, but I understand the reason for the ambiguity, because the group would essentially, it sounds like, set the rules. But that's, boy, that's an interesting approach, I think. Anyway, I think I probably said enough.
Thank you.
But I haven't said much tonight, but Rob, you mentioned something that is interesting. We don't really put this, as some people have said, this, we're not looking to put restrictions if you want to replace a window of some sort. You've got one of the most beautiful houses in town, but one of the things that makes it so beautiful is that the area around you is pretty beautiful too, and it's very old and it contributes to that. And if that were to change, and even though you didn't do anything to your house except to maintain it, I think it would take away from your place. If they decided to modernize some of the houses around you, I really think that would detract. And that's one of the things, at least I'm new to the committee, but it's one of the things that I worry about in town.
Thank you, Bill. All right, next we have Doug and Eileen. I'm going to put you down again because we have a new hand raised. I'm going to go with Esther Murphy.
Yeah, I think what they were saying is important. Everybody seems to be very worried about the limitations of what we can do to our homes. If anybody, I live on Oak Street on the corner of Oak and Salem, so anybody who drives through knows we've done a lot of work on this house in the last 2 years. Would we have been able to take the chimney off of the front if this was passed? I'm going to say yes, because it was a hazard. I don't think that kind of thing this would ever deter from. We also live on a very large lot. We have enough frontage. I could put a house in our backyard. Even if you look at the addresses, there's a space. I don't want that to happen. I've lived this house my whole life. I plan on dying in this house. My fear is we sell this house when I'm gone and somebody puts a house back there, subdivides a lot. I'm willing to take some limitations that I don't feel are going to be, I can't change my window, I can't paint my door blue, to save that. I worry about people, how bad people want to live in this neighborhood. I've had multiple people driving by ask if I want to sell my house and offer me stupid amounts of money just to get in this neighborhood. I worry about developers coming in and finding a couple houses that need work lined up, buying them and putting in an apartment building. I'm willing to take some limitations on what I can do, assuming they're going to be minimum and we have a say in that, to preserve this neighborhood for more generations. I've raised my son here. My son wants the house to raise his family in. I don't want that to change. And I fear with the way the towns are growing, it could happen if we don't do some kind of protection, even if it might hinder us, make it have to wait an extra month to do some work because it might need reviewed. I think it's worth it to keep this neighborhood what it is.
Thanks, Esther.
Okay, okay, Doug and Eileen, you can come on back. Can we get them unmuted?
Okay, I'm here.
Don't explain. just
It's
go.
Doug, not Eileen. A lot of the people who have made comments feel, I think if I can read between the lines, unnecessarily threatened. I sense that a lot of folks feel picked upon, or I'm going to be restricted, and I'm restricted enough in this life. I wanted to point out to them that the main purpose of this is not to restrict you, it's to protect you. And it's to protect the investment that all of you commenters have put into your properties. To the person on Cass Street, I point out to you that the house next door, number 15, I could buy that house and I could build a concrete and glass cubist monstrosity on the footprint of that house without having to go through the planning board or the zoning board. I could just do it. To you folks on the corner of Park and Cass, I point out to you that the incredible job that's being done diagonally across the street from you, the old tavern.
Yep.
Again, I could buy that house, tear it down, and put a cubist monstrosity there, and you couldn't have any say about it at all, as long as I didn't change the footprint. It's here to protect us, folks. But there are other things as well. It's character as well as the value and the money that we have all sunk into our properties. If you look at the map and look at the character of Locust Street, for example, or look at the smaller houses on Forest Street, those houses are all well maintained. They're in beautiful shape. They're loved and they're cared for. And they also happen to be affordable housing. And they're fun neighborhoods to be in. Children can play in the streets. Neighbors can get to meet neighbors. And that's what I think we're trying to achieve and preserve here. Not take away something, but to save what we have. And I'm done, Julie.
Thank you. That was very well put. We've gone along around in a long circle, but to sum it up, that was a very good way to put it.
Doug.
All right. I see no more hands raised. I'm going to give you a couple more seconds for the public to raise their hands and ask questions. Next step for us will be to the Historic District. See, I'm on both of them, so I'm sorry if I confuse you. The Heritage Commission is next meeting in November. November 17th. Is that correct? No, that's Tuesday. Yeah.
Yeah, we meet Tuesdays.
Yeah, Tuesdays. We have been meeting during the day around 12:30, 1 o'clock. If so, that notice will be published well before the 17th. But I would invite you, for further questions, send them please to the John Merkel's address was on the postcard, or
I will show it now too. Here we go.
Yeah. And if you have questions, please contact him or any of us. You can see our names on the town's website, and just about everybody knows how to get in touch with me, but be happy to spread the questions around. So we'll be, if you give us input before then, we can put together another one of these for, we've taken notes of what the questions have been and what the concerns are and what the pluses are. I appreciate everyone who spoke, giving us their concerns. I have to say, Doug Flockhart, you did a very well job summing up in one sentence what I've been trying to say with many. So we're going to go on. I think we're going to go on if the neighborhood is interested, and ask the planning board if it's something they will consider. And that's the first step, is just to see if the planning board would consider going forward with defining this neighborhood. And then the next step would be for the neighborhood to come up with its plan, and then the planning board would consider that. And that's as far as it goes. It doesn't go to the zoning board unless there's some kind of zoning change, like we talked about, this dividing lots or new business or something like that. So just to reassure you a little bit that we're not looking to, as many people have said, add any kind of onus onto the new property owners in the neighborhood. We just want to be sure that there's recognition for how this neighborhood was developed, and that it's something, as in the master plan, that we want to preserve as much of our town as we can. Does anybody else have final words?
No.
All right, well then I'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight. It's been very informational, I think, on both sides. And we look forward to coming back to you with some more ideas.
Great.
Good.
All right.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you all.
Do we need a motion to adjourn this meeting?
No, this is just a public informational meeting, so it's not, decisions weren't made. There's no reason for that. We're just presenters.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
See you on the
Okay.
17th.